Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Diffusion podcast. And this is special episode, we bring you Anastasia Kalinina, founder of reState, a Swiss-based foundation to reimagine the future of governance and conscious leadership. Hey, Anastasia, welcome, and feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello, Ricardo. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm everything you mentioned and probably more. And I'm here to unwrap together several ideas that our organizations have been discussing. And I really, really look forward to everything that is going to happen.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us today, Anastasia. Okay, so let's probably talk about your journey on reState. Can you go over your background and how your background prepare yourself for this moment that we're living in the global context?
Absolutely. You know, Ricardo, as they say, before you break the rules, you have to master them. So I guess first half of my career, I was quite busy understanding the rules, understanding how the world works, and some of the best spaces to look into these questions are international organizations, governmental organizations, civil society organizations, and nonprofits. So I've been involved in many of those, including some senior roles at the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, human rights organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. And so I have quite an extensive experience understanding the policy projects and the way the governments, the nonprofits operate. Now, having reached the point where I discovered that there are many inefficiencies in those, I've decided to launch an organization called the reState Foundation to look into ways and vehicles to reimagine some of these processes with the spirit of novelty, of curiosity, of proper innovation, and also an open mind. I think the world operates largely on the feeling of fear, of some huge inconvenience of us versus them narrative that drives many of our policy agendas. So my question was very simple. How can we look at the world where this transitions into something more positive, more optimistic, revealing more of what we're capable of as human beings? So I was lucky on this journey to be joined by several amazing individuals around the world who have been asking these questions too. And so we started reState about 3 years ago with all these questions on our minds, and we still continue, and hopefully we will continue over the next years.
This is going to be an amazing conversation, and just in a short thing that you mentioned, there's a lot of things to explore. I'll probably just focus on one thing, narratives. The power of narratives became quite evident in the last few years. I won't say most of them, but a lot of them have had like a very negative impact in the way
Mm.
we relate to each other. So narratives also shape trends, industry trends, and sometimes they correlate with each other actually. So if you want to explore what are the most, let's say, transformative narratives you see reshaping the industry and the society today and the next years.
Yes, absolutely. I really liked what you said about the narratives because what is the history of civilization but the history of stories we tell ourselves, right? And I'm quite displeased, I'm sure as you are, with the prominent current narratives that are usually doom and gloom, that kind of boost negativity and fear and instill this feeling of hopelessness. And I think the young people who are, coming into life and into public agendas are either turned off by all of this altogether or are just simply scared and confused by the complexity and the seeming insolvability of some of these problems. So I fully agree with you. One of the key things that we should, drive forward, if we may, is changing those narratives to something a bit more positive. Now, this is more of the philosophical notion to explore, but if we get to some more pragmatic domains, I can talk a little bit about the trends that I see from this particular angle that we're exploring, both with tools for the commons and reState and many aligned organizations. So I will talk about some trends that are not comprehensive, but that go into the fabric of society, let's say, and what is possible there. So clearly, we'll start with GovTech. GovTech, civic tech, reg tech is this is the direction that I think the world will be taking more of. I mean, selling software and designing for the government is notoriously hard and sometimes not very sexy. So many builders in the past have not even looked at it as an appealing industry. I guess Palantir was one of the early startups that managed to figure it out, and their market cap today is $125 billion, which I think provides some inspiration for other actors in this space. I think now is a uniquely good moment to give it a shot. The deficit is running high, and there is hope that the government will be finding ways to reduce spending, reduce red tape and bureaucracy, operate more efficiently. And at the same time, AI is, of course, a powerful tool that could automate many types of administrative work the government currently spends billions of dollars per year on. So if people with good intentions propose new models, they have AI software to automate work done by the government and reduce spending, make the government more efficient, which we all cannot wait to see. And LLMs are especially good at automating more repetitive admin tasks like filling out forms, reviewing applications, summarizing documents. So as consumers of government services, we will all benefit from this. Because currently the picture is that only 30%, even in the US, where I think it's not the worst, only 30% of public service recipients say that they felt as valuable customers as they were receiving those public services. So clearly, as not interesting as this may sound on the surface, I think this has some potential to explore. Same with public safety technologies. Startups are already on the case. There's license plate cameras built by the company called Flock Safety. They help now solve 10% of the reported crimes in the US, and they're aiming to target 25 of all crimes next year. There's another one called Able Police that cuts the amount of time police officers spend filling out paperwork from hours to minutes, giving them up to a quarter more hours per day to do real police work. So everything that has to do with society, of course, gets a twist and an advancement with the advent of AI and LLMs. More up our alley, I guess, stable coins are making a comeback, so to speak. And the black cloud over stable coins has always been regulation. There were many efforts to pass regulation and failing. And the regulatory future for stablecoin in the US probably looks different, but we will not believe it until we really see it at work. But in any case, stablecoin payment volumes have surged this year, and now they're over a fifth of MasterCard's volume, which is promising. Almost 30% of global remittances are now facilitated through stablecoins, and traditional finance institutions like Visa are offering platforms for banks to issue their own stablecoins. Also, Stripe recently acquired a stablecoin startup called Bridge for $1 billion, which will only attract more investor interest and capital into the space. What else? Fintech, I guess the same. The last 2 years have been a pretty rough time for fintech startups. The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank led to regulators clamping down on new startups, and investors fled the space. But we can be optimistic that this is about to change, and we will see a comeback of some more advanced financial startups, again, with the help of LLMs and AI solutions. I guess, LLMs are also good for, everybody talks about it, for chip design. Each breakthrough in AI creates demand for more powerful chips to train larger models. No country wants to fall behind in this race. And so domestic chip design and manufacture is not just about economics anymore, it's a survival in the post-AI world. So OpenAI o1 showed us that LLMs with reasoning can power breakthrough in science and engineering. And we're interested in, seeing how this is coming about. And maybe lastly, since I don't want to occupy the whole space with answering this question, there are many things advancing, but I always kept an eye on how space technologies and space companies are advancing. So now it's super exciting time as the cost to reach the orbit is falling fast, having fallen over 10 times since SpaceX first launch happened in 2006. And a startup now can build and launch a satellite on just a seed round. So if you think about how many kilograms of payload get launched into space today, imagine how many will be set up in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, and so on. So pretty exciting times we're living in. Many risks are there as well, but I think the future is looking bright.
Wow, that was a lot of insights for you there, folks, whoever is listening to it. Do pay attention to everything that Anastasia brings because it's quite relevant not only to one country but in a global context. I believe we're living through a transition time. There is a lot of chaos going on, but there is also a light at the end of the tunnel. So I do believe the future is bright as well. We just have to be equipped with information to know how to do the better choices in our own communities, regional impact, and then we can think on a national scale. Okay, Anastasia, you spoke through a lot of stuff. Let me just pick one thing that you mentioned. I think it's quite important. Efficiency, it's a big word when it comes to building the right narrative to the blockchain, because the blockchain itself is a tech. So technology sometimes is boring to sell. I believe that in the beginning, some people, like they're working with sales, they had to sell blockchain B2B. They had like a very difficult time to justify or create a compelling storytelling to sell it. But now we are at the stage that I think the world itself sets the right stage for people to realize the importance of blockchain. So when we think about society itself and integrating blockchain into actual issues that we have, what are the major challenges that you see? Because as you mentioned as well, we depend on the right people, maybe usually decision makers and policy makers with the goodwill to help us on integrating blockchain on the right places. What are the challenges that you usually see when integrating not only blockchain, but emerging technologies quickly and seamlessly to the society?
Yes, Ricardo, you're right that the issue runs way deeper than just the very capacity to introduce all of these new things technologically speaking. Clearly, science and technology have a huge potential of benefiting the society, bringing positive progress, changing the narrative. Now, we need to foster this very vibrant and dynamic space and sort of get people excited about this. But we also need to think about the frameworks in which this operates, the governance of certain technologies, how they shape, how they mold the pathways, because ultimately we want science and technology to bring out more equity, more prosperity, more health to the society and not exacerbate any of the existing gaps. But the benefits of these technologies alone, like you suggest, they're not enough. What I believe is essential is public trust when it comes to the adoption of these technologies. If people don't trust the technology, they simply won't use it. And building this trust can be quite tricky. It could only be done through societal engagement. I guess with the whole blockchain space, we already saw how this doesn't work because many people associated blockchain strictly with crypto space and all the scamming that was going on there. So they really got a wrong picture. And plus, given the perceived complexity of using it, most people, I'm not talking about, the circles that we operate in, but most people that are general public that are far from these industries, they did not take it very lightly and they were not interested in using them. Plus, they didn't trust it. I guess, actually one successful example of how this could be turned around comes from science and health. I guess HIV research is a successful example where over many years, they involved more and more people with HIV in the scientific progress and process. So it really took a long time to build this trust. I mean, these are very different examples, but we just need to bring people on board with some of these matters. We want to get them excited. We want to show them the societal value of all of this. And of course, there has to be some sort of a political will. And when I say political will, I'm not only speaking about governments, probably quite on the contrary, I'm speaking about some bottom-up solutions that could operate parallel to existing systems, in parallel to the typical regulation, this way molding it and shaping it into what it could and probably should be. So it comes on both ends. I guess governments will have to exercise political will to spread the right messages about these technologies, but people also need to start and continue building bottom-up solutions, such as citizen science, such as more democratic blockchain solutions, some of the regulatory tech suggestions from the bottom up. So it's a complex matter, and it's at the heart, I believe, of any societal change. First, we don't trust it, we don't believe it, then we see how it could benefit us and those around us, then we start testing it, then it becomes mainstream. This has been the case for most of the innovations throughout history, and I believe this is what will happen with some of the more marginal, so to speak, spaces that we're observing.
Yeah, at the bottom line, when we think about even efficiency, we should go a little beyond that and think what really matters for people around the world is the impact that they have in their own local communities. So in that sense, when we think about blockchain especially, this is a very, it's a highly modular technology. Like if you get Ethereum, for example, it's not only one network, you have protocols, and every protocol will be able to set different set of rules in regards to themselves. Some protocols failed, some protocols have emerged, bridges, emerged layers as well. So I think there's a lot of let's say, decentralized responsibility for the stakeholders and for the people that are actually building on that. I see Ethereum as a layer for digital public infrastructure as well. In that sense, like going back to the responsibility of the stakeholders, of the people that are actually building there, what are the kind of ethics they have to have in regards to what they're building and how that correlates with the actual world that we're living? What would we have to do different to don't end up in the same place?
Maybe everything. It's really, I think it could be very subjective, of course, the way one would respond to this question. But in my world, I think it really has to be built on a different set of values that we want to embody at this time, right? It really goes back to what we said about the narrative building. If everything was possible, if anything was possible, what kind of world would you want to imagine and help build? Would you want to build your models on equity and trust and faith and reciprocity and collaboration? Or would you like to keep to the old us versus them agendas, zero-sum game, violence and monopoly on violence, if we're talking about the state affairs? It's a matter of what kind of values we want to pack into our technologies, sort of between the lines. I always dreamt about, maybe I'll do it one day, building a fund that will only invest in projects that are done in collaboration between competitors. So imagine you get massive funding, but only if you're get together with your competitor and then you develop the field together. I think these are a bit unconventional, but very important ways in which we will have to shape the future. We will be needing to rethink and reimagine the very foundations of how we used to do things, because how we used to do things brought us to where we're now. In order to get to the next point, more prosperous, more optimistic society that is full of love, not fear, we will have to do things in a drastically different way. So I think for founders, it will be essential to understand what is ethical to them, what kind of world they want to see, and what are the values that they need to pack into their solutions so that this is attainable. And so imagine if a lot of different founders do that, this is how marginally, gradually, but surely the world gets changed.
You see, most people will probably, especially in the Web3 space and the blockchain industry, like will probably like to kill me if I say that. But I have to say, I'm a big fan of like the vision of stakeholder capitalism. I believe, honestly, there is no one better to know how to shape their own policies rather than the communities. So if I'm thinking, for example, we are leading the Amazonian front and I'm in Brazil, yeah. If I'm thinking about directing resources to them, like the person who will know better how to use their resources will be local people, not me. So in that sense, I believe like creating the right decentralized configuration where you allow people to collaborate in a, let's say, in a global digital platform, but also giving people the authority on what they want to do and they know it's better for them regionally will be very important. So I
Totally.
think that brings us to the collaboration. Yeah, creating the right tools for collaboration. Optimism, which is a layer two on Ethereum, is creating some sort of they're trying to create a new type of governance, so it doesn't end up in plutocracy. So the way they found, I'm not sure how they are right now, but they were trying to implement something related. The ones who get more resources are the ones that have shown more results on building on top of public goods infrastructure, meaning they have been able to be more efficient when it comes to collaborate with competitors. And going to the question, so um, like why fostering collaboration and cross communication, yeah, is important to addressing the global challenges that we have today.
Interesting. I think even biologically, if you speak to some of the evolutionary biologists, which I have actually, and there's a great one by the name of David Sloan. Many of those evolutionary biologists are now becoming system change stewards because it's clear and evident, even from the nature, that symbiosis is trumping over dispersed efforts to survive. The very nature of this world suggests that, I mean, there is some competition, healthy competition, unhealthy competition, but competition is also part of our biology. This is not to deny that. But if we take the high road, we can arrive at the notion of collaboration that is the evolutionary mechanisms that helped us survive over these hundreds of years of human evolution. And now that we can attempt at, only just attempt at, bringing about a different kind of world, this is the time to tune down on the competitiveness in us and open more to the collaborative efforts. Because this is the time in history where 1+1 is not 2. 1+1 could be 1,000 if you put your minds to it. It's just very practical and simple that together we can do more. And the very act of collaborating, I think by this very nature of things and how the world works, it just gives you an extra boost. Of course, you have to find who to collaborate with. I don't believe in collaboration for the sake of collaboration. You have to find people who are complementary in their skill sets, who are sharing your vision. There has to be some disagreement, but overall you have to be on the same page. You know, it's a very complex discussion, but the societies that are built on cohesion are usually more powerful. And it's been like this through the history of human civilization. So unless it is tested at scale, we will not see how powerful this is.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting because Me personally, I I like to call myself a Web3 dot connector. Web3 doesn't exist. We're building it. But for
Mhm.
us, in order to build it, we have to know who to connect with. More than that, knowing who to collaborate with in a specific time. Because sometimes, like, what happened to me a lot, like, I met a person, we had like a huge convergence for a time, and then we realized, okay, now it's not like what we're doing right now, it doesn't complement what we're doing to each other. So let's leave it. And then 1 year after, okay, well, now we're in this spot to collaborate. So it's more about like creating the right connections, knowing how to communicate. I think like cross communication is something important. And the thing with digital, sometimes we have a lot of, gaps, like silences between us. And I
Mhm.
think like the right digital infrastructure can help us with that. So, Anastasia, asking about more like about like real life examples so people understand your vision. When you think about like impact driven innovation, what is the like the most practical example that inspires you and also inspires reState?
Sure, it's very difficult, Ricardo, to pick one or two, since there are many different fields of activity. So I could probably give you several examples from different fields, beginning with what we're involved with. So, future of governance, of participatory tooling. I'm a really big fan and have been over the years of Polis solution for digital democracy. I'm sure most of your audience would know what it is, but for those who have forgotten, it's an open source platform that is used to facilitate large scale, inclusive, and very nuanced public discussions. So governments and organizations use it to engage citizens in policy making. And it is actually done in a scale that is interesting for people, because oftentimes people get tired of this, or it's not intuitive, or they just do not understand the purpose, they don't see the impact. But here, there were many examples where thousands of people contributed their views in real time, creating real democratic and transparent processes. Taiwan was one of the pioneers of adopting Polis, and they used it as a platform to resolve contentious issues like ride-sharing regulations. And in fact, the very nature of people participating in it has shifted what was originally envisaged by the government. So they attained real impact. So basically, it uses AI to cluster opinions and highlight areas of agreement and also disagreement to help policymakers focus on shared priorities rather than divisive topics. This creates trust, which I've mentioned before, that I consider very important. It really creates a more participatory and collaborative relationship between governments and citizens. So examples like this just keep giving. From the space of governance, I wouldn't say it's like most breakthrough and impactful, but I sort of like solutions like Truera, which is the cutting edge platform that provides explainability and governance tools for artificial intelligence models. It could be used by financial institutions, governments, and corporations to ensure fairness and compliance in the AI systems, which I think is very essential. We have not spoken about AI ethics, but again, just like with everything else, we need to instill a different set of values now that we're designing it. So it's really trying to bring ethical AI, help detect and mitigate biases in AI modeling, promoting fairness in areas like credit scoring, hiring, public services. So I'm quite a big fan of those. But of course, I mean, these are technology solutions and brilliant examples in those areas. But I'm also sort of keeping an eye on tackling some issues like poverty, including energy poverty, for example. I'm really concerned about that. We're discussing this next level of citizen engagement, whereas in much of the world, actually, there is a very sheer lack of access to very essential products and services. Across Africa, currently there's over 700 million people who don't have access to electricity, and many of them are connected to unreliable grids. So I really appreciate solutions that are not very digitally oriented, but very pragmatic. I really like, for example, the B-Box, which is a modular solar energy solution designed to provide affordable and reliable electricity to those off-grid communities in developing regions. So I think we should always keep an eye on a larger picture, and that the future is not equally distributed, so to speak. So as we are solving for the most advanced economies and solutions and ideas, we should also always keep an eye on what's on the other side of the spectrum, where we still need to cover some very basic needs of the people elsewhere. I think we tend to forget about those as we get deeper and deeper into the fabric of the digital solutions.
Wow, that was very insightful, Anastasia. Thank you. I think you covered a lot of, concepts, and we need to dream high. But you also brought a lot of tangible examples so people understand what we're talking. And this is not just a dream. This is actual the reality we're living in. There's a lot of work being done silently. I love that. And I also like to bring things to the public so they understand and don't get caught up by the surprises. So, Anastasia, so we're heading to the end of the podcast. We only have 5 minutes left. I'll leave you a short space for you to pitch your own social medias. If you want to cover a little bit more about reState in the next few years. So this is a space for yourself.
Oh, sure, that was fast. Yes, I'd like to talk about this vision, but I think it's not only the vision of reState, it's more of the invitation for many of the aligned organizations and individuals to enter this space and co-shape together. And I see what is going on in the world right now as an emergent puzzle to which everyone brings their piece. So I can talk about the puzzle piece that reState brings, but of course we should always keep an eye on the larger picture. So for us, over the next decades, as we're advancing the mission and the goals of the organization, we want to attain a world where governance and systems operate as expressions of humanity's highest potential. So who we are as human beings living in our highest potential, harmonizing intelligence, intuition, interconnectedness to really create thriving, equitable futures. And, we want to be a trailblazer in designing governance and leadership systems that transcend traditional boundaries. So we really want to focus in unearthing human superpowers. We want to blend the rigor of science with the wisdom of history to unlock human capabilities like collective intuition, emotional intelligence, interconnected problem solving. We really want to engage also in conscious system redesign. That means we want to develop governance and economic models rooted in principles of oneness, collaboration, sustainability, transforming how power and resources are distributed. And we want to run, because we want to keep it practical, we want to run real global experiments in evolutionary leadership by creating immersive experimental platforms for leaders and organizations to embody next level understanding of ourselves while solving real world challenges. What I did mention is that all the theory and all the models that we're developing in reState, because we're bringing some of the best people in the space to understand how the new social, economic, financial, governance, educational models look like. But it doesn't stop there. We are bringing those models to the real world, and we work with governments and with communities around the world to adopt them. We worked a lot in the last years with island nations like Barbados, Palau, designing solutions for them to adopt in real policy. We also work with a few countries in the Middle East, understanding or help them understand how the future of governance could look like. That is based on a different set of principles, of which participation is one. It's not always easy in all regions of the world, but at least there is some aspiration to it. And we work with pretty much anyone and everyone who feels like it's time for them to come up with bolder solutions for themselves. which could also be blueprints for the others to follow. And importantly, we of course work with non-governmental actors that still need governance solutions of the new era and with the new sets of principles. For example, we work a lot with private cities and the emerging network nations and network sovereignties, those who are supranational or anti-national or whatever. We really don't care. We're really agnostic here, as long as the vision is similar to how we see the future: transparent, participatory, human-centric. And many of those are in dire need of new governance designs. So we help them deliver those. I could not help mentioning a trip to Brazil that I recently took with some of your colleagues, your wonderful colleagues. We also saw some interest in experimenting, both on the city level and also with communities that have nothing to do with the state or cities or whatsoever. It's very inspiring. I think in the next decade, we really can move into properly redesigning the very foundations that govern humanity by integrating these advanced consciousness solutions into design and operations. And definitely this will transcend conventional system change, because we want to merge cutting-edge innovation with the highest standards of human awareness and interconnectedness. So for me, it's always the external meeting with the internal. It's only through combining the internal and the external that we could change the systems, right? If we only focus on the external side of things, what kind of systems we should have, what kind of models, what kind of people should be driving it, it's not enough. Who are those people inside is the real questions. And, we marvel at the stories of extraordinary kindness, unyielding courage, and feats of mind and spirit that seem beyond us. But these aren't really marks of the extraordinary. These are simply human, and their extraordinariness lies only in their rarity and how deeply buried they are beneath distraction, fear, and forgetting. So what we want to do is just remember and ask the question, what might you become when you realize that you are so much more than you know? And so this will be the guiding question, I guess, for us in the next decade. And hopefully this will get us somewhere. And I invite you to join us on this journey. I guess you could do that by shooting us an email on the website or connecting on social media or else, or just staying in touch in other ways.
Wow, that was a very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for all your explanation, your vision, a very inspiring vision, but also bringing concrete examples of what's being done today. So Anastasia, once again, I'd like to thank you for your participation. I'd like to invite the audience to follow you on social media. Guys, well, Anastasia is a thought leader more than a founder. She is an inspired person to connect with and follow on LinkedIn. So I'll tag her name and her links to social media on the bio. And wow, this is it for today. That was a special edition of Diffusion podcast. It was amazing to have Anastasia here, and we hope we have her in another opportunity, because there was a lot of things to be talked over, and this was a very short conversation. Anyway, I
Just an
wish you
intro. Yes, thank you so
just an
much.
intro.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Wish you
Yes, thank you
well.
for
Happy
making it
Christmas.
special.
No,
Mhm.
I'm the one to thank you. So yeah, if you want to close up with just one small liner for the next year.
Well, yeah, happy holidays, everyone. Let us really, this whole situation in the world is calling us to step into our own greatness. So this is my wish for you for the next year and beyond. And I want to particularly thank you, Ricardo, for embodying this vision, all the great things that you guys are doing, which I always look at and follow with great interest. This is exactly the spirit that we need to be stepping forward. So thank you very much, and wishing you a wonderful holiday season as well.
I'm gonna say it for your kind words. This is it, guys. So I hope I'll see you all next week, and the future podcast ends here. Bye.